Good morning. Good to see everyone this morning. We are in the book of Joshua. Joshua chapters 9 through 11. You'll begin to see that we'll speed up in spots now because there will be, the book of Joshua speeds up, covers a large amount of material very quickly because it's talking about the battles and things like that. But I really want us to see chapter 9 because of the great contrast. We're almost returning in our approach to God. We're almost returning to what we saw when we went to Jericho earlier, and certainly not anywhere close to what happened at Ai. So let's begin with God's instructions, and to do that we need to go back to the book of Deuteronomy, Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 16. Let's see what Moses said that God wanted them to do when he spoke on that occasion. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 16. Here's what he said. He said, "You must destroy all the ethnic groups which the always present one your God hands over to you. Don't feel sorry for them. Do not worship their gods, otherwise they will trap you." Now watch the wording there. Very important. Why are they to destroy the people of Canaan? And the answer is because if they leave them there, their gods may trap them. I think that plays a role in a part of what we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. In Deuteronomy chapter 20, we'll see the only other instruction that we'll read probably right now. It's in verses 16 and 17. "But in the towns of these ethnic groups which are close by, you must not let anything that breathes stay alive. This is the land which the always present one your God is giving to you to possess. Completely destroy these people, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, just as the always present one your God has commanded you." So they're supposed to kill everyone nearby. Now, because of that, God gives a law, and the law is you can't make any treaties with the people of the land, the people right there around you. And that's very, very important in light of what we're going to discover in chapter 9. And I know it comes about because they're deceived. But in the book of Exodus, he's very clear. Don't do that. Now, by the way, failure to obey God's law led to a lot of trouble. Particularly, you'll notice in the book of 2 Samuel that we come on the fact that Saul violated the treaty. And when he violated the treaty, the Gibeonites had a claim to make, and they made that claim, and it ends up costing some of Saul's descendants their lives because of that. All right, so let's look at how all this transpired. Begin at verse 1, chapter 9. "All the kings west of the Jordan River heard about these things. They were the kings of the Hittites, the Amorites, Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. They lived in the mountains on the foothills and all along the whole Mediterranean sea coast as far as Lebanon. All these kings joined forces to fight against Joshua and the Israelites." Now, if you're looking at this in terms of geography, you'll discover that there are 3 mountain ranges in Israel. There's a mountain range that is on the east side of the Jordan River. There's a mountain range that is on the west side of the Jordan River, and by the way, that includes where Jerusalem is. And then there's one more mountain range called, I believe, the Anti-Lebanon Mountains that goes through there. And then off of those mountains is what they call the Shephelah. That's the land that slopes down to go to the Mediterranean Sea. And guess where most of these people live? Right there. Why? Because it's good land. Because it gets good water. It comes off the mountain and waters their crops and things like that. And so that's why they are there. What has happened? They've heard about the defeat. If you think about this in military terms, just in military terms, what Joshua has done under the direction of God is sliced right through the midsection of the Promised Land. So what's left? Well, if you slice through the midsection, you got the north and you got the south, don't you? And so here they come. These are the southern kings. And they're building up an alliance. And they're getting ready to attack the children of Israel. But one mighty king decides to go another route. And you find that beginning in verse 3. The people who lived in the town of Gibeon also heard about what Joshua had done to Jericho and to Ai. So they decided to trick the Israelites. They went and got some old wine bags that were cracked and patched up, and they put them in some old saddlebags on their donkeys. Then they traveled as a delegation. The Gibeonite men also had worn out, patched up sandals on their feet, and there were raggedy old clothes. In addition, they took along some dry, moldy crumbs of bread. Okay, by the way, if Israel had not have had God's support, this is exactly what their clothing would have looked like when they finished the wilderness. They'd been worn out. You want to talk about what God did for them? God did a lot for them. Things that I'm sure they didn't even think about, but God took care of them. What about this city, Gibeon? Well, Gibeon is only 6 miles northwest of Jerusalem, and it's 7 miles southwest of Ai. You talk about smack dab in the middle of the country. I mean, it's right there. And they've heard what goes on. Is it a real place? The answer is easy, yes. Pharaoh Shishonk, the first of the late 10th century BC, added Gibeon to a list of conquered or visited, hard to tell when you read his writings, towns during a successful military campaign into Palestine. That comes from Walton in the work that he did on these books. Okay, let's go ahead to verse 6 of chapter 9. They came to Joshua at the campsite near Gilgal. The Gibeonite men said to Joshua and the men of Israel, "We've traveled from a land that is far away. Make a peace treaty with us now." Now, they introduced themselves as being from a distant land. And what they want to do is, now watch this, because it's very difficult to read in our English translations. They say, "cut a covenant with us." All right. That is an expression that's actually used about God with Abraham. If you go all the way back to chapter 15 of the book of Genesis, God cuts a covenant with Abraham. You remember what he did? He got Abraham to cut some animals in two, and he laid half the animal on one side and half on the other, kind of made a pathway, if you would. And when you walk through that and you make a commitment, what are you saying? You're saying, if I don't live up to what I promised, may I be cut in half like these animals. Okay, every time you say cut a covenant, every time in the Old Testament, that means the one that's making the covenant is more powerful than the ones accepting the covenant. So when the men of Gibeon said, "cut a covenant with us," they're saying, "You're more powerful than us. We're going to do whatever terms you give us." Interesting. Because they're going to end up with some terms they may not like, even though their lives are spared. So that's ultimately what they're trying to do. Verses 7 and 8. The men of Israel said to these Hivites, "How could we make a pact with you? Maybe you live near us." That's a pretty insightful question or thought. Maybe you live nearby. Well, they did, as a matter of fact. The Gibeonites said to Joshua, "No, we are your servants." Now watch these fellows, because they use the idea of servants again and again as they talk. We're your servants. We're your servants. And Joshua's going to capitalize on that. Even though he makes a mistake, he will capitalize on it a little bit later. Verses 9 and 10 continues. The man answered him, "We have come..." Wait a minute, excuse me. Gibeonites said, "No, we are your servants." But Joshua asked them, "Who are you and where do you come from?" The man answered him, "We've come from a country that is very far away. We came because we heard of the name of Yahweh your God. He's famous. We heard about everything he did in Egypt." You want to talk about smart people. They're calculating in how they do this. They don't tell about the fall of Jericho or the fall of Ai. They know about it. There's no doubt about that. But they don't tell that because they came from a far country. What they hear about? What God did to Egypt and what God did to the two kings on the east side of the Jordan. They know that, and so they repeat that. Verse 10, he continues, we've also heard about all that he did to the two kings of the Amorites, Sihon, the king of Heshbon, and Og, the king of Bashan, who was king in Ashtaroth. They were on the east side of the Jordan River. You talk about smart. You got to watch your kids. They'll do the same thing. You ever notice that? They tell you only what will not hurt them. They reserve any other information. You have to ask them if you want to find out. And if they think that you can't find out, they might not tell you the whole truth on that. Maybe your children are better than I were, or better than I was, but that's just my experience. Let's put it that way. That's the way that works. So they didn't mention the crossing of Jordan. They didn't mention the fall of Jericho. These things are laid aside. Verse 11. So our elders and all the people who live in our land told us, take food for your trip and go meet the Israelites. Say to them, we are your, here comes that word again, servants. Make a peace treaty with us now. Again, the wording here is cut a covenant. Cut a covenant. We're inferior to you. Cut a covenant with us. And we're going to abide by whatever you say. Look, this is our bread. On the day we left home to travel here, it was still warm and fresh. But now it's dry and moldy. And here are our wine bags. When we left home, they were new when we filled them with wine. But now, look, they're old and cracked. And these are our old clothes and our old sandals. They're almost worn out from such a long journey. Boy, listen, you want to talk about, they set themselves up to tell a lie, and everything matched their story. Every little bit. Of course, it wasn't true, but it matched up real well, with what they were telling the children of Israel. Verses 14 and 15. The men of Israel tasted the old bread. However, they did not consult Yahweh about it. So Joshua made peace with them, and he made a treaty of friendship with the people of Gibeon. He agreed to let them live. The leaders of the Hebrew community made a vow to honor the pact. Listen to this. Here's what Holdcroft said about this, and I liked it. Joshua and the elders were unduly hasty in confirming a pact of non-aggression with the Gibeonites. The Israelites seriously erred because they did not inquire of the Lord. Someone comments, a people who had access to the voice of God settled for a few mouthfuls of stale food. Ooh, does that hit home a little bit? Do we sometimes make our decisions without praying and enlisting, God to our aid? Do we forget to ask God for wisdom? Do we forget to pray about matters, whatever they might be, before we do them? I wonder how many things in my life would have been different if I'd have spent more time in prayer. I can't answer that, but my suspicion is a lot would have been. That I would have done a lot of things different if I'd have just slowed down and prayed about it. Do you tend to be impulsive? Let me tell you what. I can tell you, Jeff could tell you too. Kroger believes in impulse buying. I guarantee you they do. Things that I want, the other day I was in the store, and something I wanted that I knew they had, they put it way up here on top shelf. Why? They knew I'd find it. They knew I'd go after that. What do they put down here on eye level? Ooh, nice things, sweets and new items that they think I might be interested in. That's what they put there because they want me to impulse buy. We need to be careful when it comes to serving God. Don't be an impulse server. Pray to God. Ask Him for His guidance. Joshua made a mistake. Hey, by the way, is this not proof that the Bible's from God? I think it is. God portrays even His great men. He portrays their weaknesses. He doesn't hide them. David sins with Bathsheba. Joshua makes a covenant he shouldn't have made. Moses loses his temper. Everybody in here that's ever lost your temper, Moses is your go-to guy to say, well, I know God knows how to forgive me. I'll still get my punishment, but God knows how to forgive me before it's all over. All these people, they're great people. Noah gets drunk. Is that a good thing? No. God doesn't commend that. But the point is, if men had written this, claiming it was from God, what would they have done to make it look like that it was from God? Well, all of God's people have been perfect. They'd made no mistakes. But God knows people are people. People are going to make mistakes. And guess what? I'm in the same category. And I suspect you are too. Don't know the whole truth about it. All right. So that's what happens. Go on to verse 16 here. 3 days later, after they had made that pact with them, the Israelites learned that the Gibeonites were their neighbors. They lived nearby. What was the exact thing they said? You might live close to us. Well, they did, is the reality of it. All right, so pick up at 17. So the Israelites went over where the Gibeonites lived. On the third day, the Israelites arrived at their cities. The cities were Gibeon, Shepherah, Beeroth, and Kiriath Jearim. By the way, that plays a key role later in biblical history. The Israelites did not attack those cities because the leaders of the Jewish community had made a solemn promise to the Gibeonites by Yahweh, the God of Israel. The whole Jewish community complained against the leaders who had made that pact. But all the leaders answered all of them, we have given our word by Yahweh, the God of Israel. We cannot attack them now. This is what we'll do. We must let them live. We cannot kill them, or else God's punishment will be upon us, because we would be breaking the promise that we swore to them. What does God say in the Ten Commandments? Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Who did they swear by? God. Do you keep a promise that even hurts you because you made the promise? The answer is yes. Yes, you do. That doesn't mean that you like it. By the way, it's interesting. Kyle and Delitzsch say the violation of an oath is always sin, even when the oath has been taken inconsiderately, and is afterwards discovered that what was sworn to was not in accordance with the will of God, and that an observation of the oath will certainly be hurtful. And that gives some examples. There are some references which I repeated for you in the next part. I don't know how to answer everything about Jephthah's daughter. We're going to come to that when we get to the book of Judges. But I know this. Jephthah swore. And he had to keep the oath. Now, how did that transpire? There are many debates about that. I'm not going to get into an elaborate discussion of the debates. But when you swear something, you got to do it. Even if it hurts you. Even if it's not the best thing. You ever paid for something, that you bought thinking it was a good thing and found out it was a piece of trash? Ever done that? Yeah, most of us have. At one time or another. Hopefully it wasn't a lot. Didn't spend a lot, but we do it, don't we? And they had to honor their promise. Verse 21, as we continue looking at this. So the leaders said to the Jewish community, let the Gibeonites live, but they will have to cut wood and carry water for our entire community, just as the leaders had agreed with the Gibeonites. Remember? Cut a covenant. Who's in the superior position? The Israelites. Can they make demands of the Gibeonites? Yes, they can. How many times did the Gibeonites say, we are your servants? Guess what they did to them? Okay, You're our servants. You said that, we're going to pin it to you right there. Your servants. All right, keep going because it doesn't really stop there. Begin at verse 22. Then Joshua summoned the Gibeonites. He said to them, why did you lie to us? You claimed that your country was very far away, and yet you live nearby. Now, you are condemned. You will become our slaves. You will always have to cut wood and carry water for the house of my God. Okay, remember when I started out, we looked at some other references in Deuteronomy? What's the danger of letting the people of the land live? What's the danger? That will pursue their gods, right? That they'll go after their gods. What does Joshua do that might prevent that from taking place? He makes the Gibeonites servants, guess where? In the tabernacle of God. Or in the service of the tabernacle. They didn't go into it. But they cut the wood and they carried the water. That keeps them constantly before God. And the Gibeonites may have had more respect for God sometimes than the Israelites did. You don't know the whole truth about it because of this agreement. We'll go a little bit further. The Gibeonites answered Joshua with this statement. We lied to you because we feared for our very lives. That's why we did it. We received reliable information that Yahweh your God had commanded his servant Moses to give all of this land to you people and to wipe out all the people in your path who live in this land. You got to wonder where they got that information. That's true. That's exactly what God told Moses, is that when you go into the land, you wipe them out. And the Gibeonites know that. Now, how'd they find out? Maybe the CIA is older than we thought it was. I don't know. Something going on here. They knew a lot, didn't they? Knew a lot about it. So they go on. Now listen, we're in your hands. You may do with us whatever you wish. You do anything to us that you think is right. So Joshua agreed. He spared their lives. He did not allow the Israelites to kill them. But on that day, Joshua did make the Gibeonites slave to the Israelites. The Gibeonites cut the wood and carried the water for the Jewish community. And all the Gibeonites would continue doing all those tasks for the altar of Yahweh, wherever he chose that place to be. And then the writer makes a comment. They are still doing this today. Again, I don't know when this was written, but whenever it was written, they're still doing just what they said they'd do. They lived up to that commitment. All right. So now we've dealt with the Gibeonites. So that's a southern city that we're talking about, but it's not the only one. Remember, all these other guys have allied themselves, and they're going to go against Israel. But they kind of changed their mind. I mean, they are going to go against Israel. At least that's the plan. But first, they're going to deal with Gibeon. You guys are traitors, and we're going to deal with you. So listen to him as he starts chapter 10. Adonizedek, the king of Jerusalem, heard that Joshua had captured Ai and completely destroyed it along with its king. He heard that Joshua had done the same thing to Jericho and its king. Adonizedek also learned that the Gibeonites had made peace with Israel and were living among them. Adonizedek and his people were very afraid. Why? Because Gibeon was a big city, like one of the other cities that had a king. Gibeon was bigger than Ai, and all its men were good fighters. So Adonizedek, the king of Jerusalem, sent a message to Hoham, the king of Hebron. He also sent word to Piram, the king of Jarmuth, and to Japhia, the king of Lachish, and to Deber, the king of Eglon, saying, "Come up to me and help me. Let us attack the city of Gibeon, because the Gibeon has made peace with Joshua and the Israelites." Then those 5 Amorite kings joined forces. They were the kings of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon. All their armies came to the city of Gibeon, and they surrounded it and attacked it. They didn't like traitors. Now, I would point out something interesting. To me, this is the only time these kings fight together. When you get on down the text, they don't fight together. And of course, they're fighting against God. It wouldn't have mattered anyway, to be honest about it. But they are allied against the traitor, so to speak. So, verse 6, the Gibeonites send an urgent message, Joshua, to his camp at Gilgal. The message said, "We're your servants." Hey, we've heard that somewhere before. We're your servants. Don't let us be destroyed. Come up to us quickly and save us. Help us. All the Amorite kings living in the mountains have joined their forces against us. One writer that I read said all Joshua had to do to finish off Gibeon was just to come too slowly. But he made a promise, didn't he? He made an oath, gave his word. And if he'd have gone too slowly and let them die, would he have been honoring his oath? I think the answer is no. He would not have been honoring his oath. So, here we go. Here comes, Joshua as he begins to deal with this matter. So Joshua marched up from Gilgal, he and the whole army. His best fighting men were with him. Yahweh spoke to Joshua, "Don't be afraid of those Amorite armies. I will put them into your hands. Not a single one of them will be able to stand up to you." God's reassurance. This time, you don't have to wait to hear from God. They're honoring a commitment they made with an oath to God, right? Would God want us to do that? That's pretty easy. The answer is yes. And so God says, don't worry about it. I'm going to give them to you. They're yours. And that's the message. All right, begin at verse 9 of chapter 10. Then Joshua and his army did a forced all-night march to Gibeon from Gilgal and surprised them. Yahweh confused the Amorites ahead of the Israelites. The Amorites panicked. He struck them down. There was a lot of bloodshed at Gibeon. Yahweh chased them on the road going up to Beth Horon. Yahweh killed men all the way to Azekah and Makkedah. As the Amorites ran away from the Israelites coming down from the hill at Beth Horon on the way to Azekah, Yahweh showered huge hailstones upon the Amorites from the sky. They were killed. In fact, more men were killed by hailstones than the number which the Israelites killed with their swords. Have you noticed that when God fights for you, He wants to be sure you know, I'm fighting for you. You will not lose. If He's on your side, Paul puts it differently, same point, Romans chapter 8, if God be for us, who can be against us? And the answer is, you read this text, the answer is nobody. There's nobody going to be against you and be successful. And that's the point that we really want to underscore here in this particular place. God is given full credit for the victory in this case, wiping out basically the armies of 5 kings. So pick up at verse 12 of chapter 10. That day Yahweh handed over the Amorites to the Israelites. Joshua stood in front of the whole army of Israel and spoke to Yahweh. O sun, stand still over Gibeon. O moon, stop at the valley of Ajalon. So the sun stood still and the moon stopped until the nation of Israel could take vengeance upon their enemies. These words are written in the book of Jasher. Brethren, be careful. There are things that are put out on the internet that make us, if we copy them, if we forward them, they make us look dumb. One is out there that says NASA has run computers, and in running those computers, they found a missing day. Baloney. That's a technical term. You want me to define that out? Okay, they didn't do that. They didn't do that. Don't share that with anybody. That makes us look bad. To my knowledge, there's no way you and I can prove that a day stood still. We don't have that ability. We just have to believe God, and that the day stood still. It stood right where it was, and this was so they could win. The sun stopped in the middle of the sky, did not hurry to go down for an entire day. There's never been such a day before or after like that day. Yahweh listened to a human being because Yahweh himself was fighting on behalf of Israel. After this, Joshua and all Israel went back to the camp at Gilgal. What do you do after victory? If you're the Allied army in World War II, when you finally win the beaches at Normandy, what do? You press on, right? That's not what God's people do. They don't press on. Listen, as he goes forward with that. They went back to Gilgal. During the battle, these 5 kings ran away. They hid in a cave near Makkedah, but someone found the 5 kings hiding in that cave near Makkedah, so he told Joshua about it. So Joshua ordered, close up the opening of the cave with big rocks and put some men there to guard the kings. But you soldiers, don't stay there. Keep chasing after the enemies. Attack them from the rear. Don't let them arrive at their city safely. Why? Because the always present one, your God, has delivered them into your hands. So Joshua and the Israelites finished slaughtering them. It was a huge defeat. The Amorites were wiped out. Only a few survivors reached their strong walled cities. After the conflict, all the army returned safely to Joshua at the camp at Makkedah. No one dared to say anything negative about any soldier in the Israelite army. Joshua said, move the rocks that are covering the opening to that cave. Bring those 5 kings to me out of that cave. So Joshua's men obeyed. They brought out those 5 kings from the cave to him, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon. When they had brought out those kings to Joshua, he summoned every one of his soldiers to that spot. Joshua said to the military commanders who were with him, come here, put your feet on the necks of these kings. So they got closer and put their feet on the necks of the 5 kings. Then Joshua said to his men, be strong and brave. Don't be afraid. Don't be intimidated. I will now show you what the always present one will do to all the enemies whom you will fight in the future. What does he do? Watch. Then Joshua struck down the 5 kings. He executed them. Joshua hung up their corpses on 5 trees, and he left them hanging on the trees until evening. Okay, what's Joshua's point? If God's on your side, you're going to win. This is what you're going to do to all your enemies. You don't have to fear anybody. Now, does Israel take this lesson to heart? No. They don't. How do I know? Because when they go divide the land, you remember how that Joshua observes in this writing that they hadn't driven all the people out? They didn't take this to heart. They should have. God had shown, I'm for you. But this ought to be a lesson to us. Will God fight for us? I think the answer to that's obvious. The question is, will you stay on His side? Will I stay on His side? Will we do what He wants us to do? If we do what He wants us to do, we got a guarantee. Ultimately, we'll win the victory. It may look like we're being defeated, but we'll win the victory. Ultimately. Very important to see that. By the way, taking the bodies down before sundown is part of the law of Moses. And you remember the Jewish leaders wanted Jesus and the two thieves to be taken down too before sundown. They understood that that was part of the law, even though they didn't particularly honor God's law in other ways. At sundown, Joshua commanded his men to take down the dead bodies from the trees. Then the soldiers threw the corpses of the 5 kings into the same cave where they've been hiding. Then the soldiers closed up the opening to the cave with big rocks. They're still there today. That day, Joshua captured Makkedah. He killed their king with a sword and completely destroyed all the people in that city. No one was left alive. Joshua did the same thing to the king of Makkedah as he'd done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua and all the Israelites moved from Makkedah to Libnah, and they attacked Libnah. And the always present one handed over Libnah and its king to Israel. The army of Israel put everybody to the sword in the city of Libnah. None survived. So Joshua did the same thing to that king as he'd done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua and all Israel moved on from Libnah to Lachish. They besieged Lachish. Then they attacked it. The always present one handed over Lachish to Israel. The Israelites captured it on the second day. They put everybody in there to the sword, like Joshua had done to the city of Libnah. About this time, Horam, the king of Gezer, arrived to help defend the city of Lachish. So Joshua struck him down, and his army too. Nobody survived. Then Joshua and all Israel moved on from Lachish to Eglon. They besieged Eglon and attacked it. On that day they captured Eglon. They used their swords to kill every single soul in Eglon. They completely destroyed everything, just like Joshua had done to the city of Lachish. Then Joshua and all Israel went up from Eglon to Hebron and attacked it. They captured it and all the villages near it. The Israelites put everybody in Hebron to the sword, including its king. None survived. They did the same thing that Joshua had done to the city of Eglon. They completely destroyed Hebron and every person in it. Then Joshua and all Israel went back to the city of Debir and attacked it. Joshua captured Debir and its king, along with all the villages near it. The Israelites struck them down with their swords. They completely destroyed everybody in Debir. Nobody survived. Joshua did the same thing to Debir and its king. They had done to the city of Libnah and its king and the city of Hebron. So Joshua defeated the entire country, the mountains, the Negev, the foothills, the slopes, and all their kings. None survived. Joshua completely destroyed everything that breathed, just as the always present one, the God of Israel, had commanded. Joshua defeated all the cities from Kadesh Barnea to Gaza. He defeated all the territory from Goshen to Gibeon. He captured all those kings and their lands in a single campaign. Why? Because the always present one, the God of Israel, was fighting on behalf of Israel. Then Joshua and all Israel returned to their base camp at Gilgal. That's pretty impressive. So now the whole now we got the midsection of the promised land conquered. That was Jericho and Ai preeminently. Now we've conquered the south, which includes all the mountains from Jerusalem down, the Shephelah, which would be the low-lying hills, and then the plain that led all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. They've wiped all that out. It's all theirs, just like God promised. So, chapter 11, we'll read what we can. When Jabin, the king of Hazor, heard about what had happened, he sent urgent messages to Jobab, the king of Madon, and the king of Shimron, and the king of Ashaph, and to the kings of the northern mountains, the kings of the Jordan Valley, south of the lake Galilee, to the kings in the foothills, and the Naphoth Dor on the west. Jabin also sent word to the kings of the Canaanites in the east and the west. He sent messages to the Amorites and the Hittites, the Perizzites, and the Jebusites in the hill country. Jabin also sent word to the Hivites who lived below Mount Hermon and in the region of Mizpah. Here's a case where if you really want to watch this, you want to look at a map and watch what's happening. We've already taken out midsection and south. All these kings are from the north. The region generally we call Galilee in the New Testament. That's what we're talking about now. So you've got Mount Hermon, and you've got the Sea of Galilee, which I think is called Chinneroth in most translations. In the Old Testament, it's usually called Chinneroth, but it's Galilee. Same thing. Same sea that we're talking about there, or more nearly we call it a lake, because that's really what it is. So here's what he's doing. So these kings, verse 4, chapter 11, mobilized all their troops. It was a huge army, including a very large number of horses and chariots. In fact, it looked like there were as many men as the grains of sand on the seashore. All these kings met together at the waters of Lake Merom. They consolidated their armies together into one camp. They made plans to fight against the Israelites. Then Yahweh spoke to Joshua, "Don't be afraid of them. About this time tomorrow, I will hand all them over to you. You will kill all of them. You will cripple the hind legs of their horses and set all of their chariots on fire." So Joshua and his entire army surprised that army. They attacked them beside the waters of Lake Merom. So the always present one did hand them over to the Israelites. They struck them down. The Israelites chased them to the greater Sidon, to Mishrath Maim, and to the valley of Mizpah in the east. The Israelites struck them until none of the Canaanites survived. Joshua did to them as Yahweh had told him. He crippled the hind legs of their horses and set their chariots on fire. Why do you cripple the hind legs of the horses? They can't pull the chariots. If you cut the we call it the hamstring, cut the hamstring, they're not going to pull a chariot. So they're no good for battle, at all. They didn't kill the animals. Animals could have been later used for food. I mean, I know we don't usually eat horses in the United States, but I'm just telling you, that could have been what was done. Then Joshua went back and captured the city of Hazor and executed its king. The city of Hazor had formerly been the leader of all those kingdoms that fought against Israel. Israel killed everybody in Hazor. That completely destroyed them. Joshua did not leave anyone breathing. Then Joshua set the city of Hazor on fire. Joshua executed all their kings, captured all the towns of those kings. Joshua completely destroyed them, just as Moses, the servant of Yahweh, had commanded. However, except for the city of Hazor, the Israelites did not burn any cities that were built on their mounds. Hazor was the only city that Joshua burned. The people of Israel kept all the plunder of those towns for themselves. They seized all the animals, but they killed all the people there until they were all destroyed. They left no one breathing. Long ago, Yahweh had commanded his servant Moses to do this. Then Moses commanded Joshua to do it. So Joshua carried it out. Joshua did exactly what Yahweh had commanded Moses. Now, when I referred to something a while ago, think about it. If you're winning a battle, do you pause long enough to kill those kings and hang them on trees? No. You don't do that. But honoring God, going all the way back to the previous chapter, you're going to do whatever God wants you to do. Every bit of it. And that's what's happening here. They're following God's instructions all the way through. And we want to realize that. Verse 16, chapter 11. So Joshua captured all that land. He got control of the mountains, all the Negev, all the Goshen region, the foothills, and the Jordan Valley, as well as the mountains of Israel and its foothills. Joshua controlled all the land from Mount Halak, which leads up to Seir, to Baal Gad in the valley of Lebanon. It was at the foot of Mount Hermon. Joshua captured all their kings, beat them, and executed them. Joshua fought against all those kings for many years. Not a single city made peace with the Israelites. Only the Hivites, who lived in the city of Gibeon, had a peace treaty. All the other cities were defeated in battle. Why? Because the always present one caused those people to be stubborn so that they would fight against Israel. Now, how did God do that? Somebody said, well, God, he's mean like that. No, I want you to think about it. William, I don't want an example. I just want to know, do you know how to make your daughter mad? He said, yes, sir. You know how to make your son mad? It's not hard, is it? See, we know when God brought this army in there and he had them wiping people out one after the other, what did it do to them? Did they want to submit? Only Gibeon. Everybody else are just, we're going to show them. We're going to beat them. How did God make them stubborn? It's easy. He appealed to the very thing in them that would make them that way. That's what he did. I want to remind you that the same sun that melts butter hardens clay. What you and I need to look at is, am I going to be butter for God or am I going to be clay? That's a pretty big, important thing. All right, can you finish reading the chapter? I think you can, because I'm not sure I can do it in the minutes I've got left. I did want to pause. How many people, and this week's a golden opportunity. Everybody could have invited somebody to Vacation Bible School. How many people have invited somebody or talked to somebody about God this week? Raise your hands, please. Oh, we got to do better. I mean, we've got a bunch that did it, but everybody's got to join in. Invite them to come to Vacation Bible School. It's going to be a great week. We got adult classes. Somebody asked me yesterday as we knocked doors, they said, what ages do you? I said, we take them from the womb to the tomb. That's the way it's going to be. So let's work on it this week. Thank you.